At 61, Brad Pitt admitted, "I lost myself because of love." Hollywood had never heard Brad Pitt speak this honestly before. After nearly a decade of silence, the man once known as the most perfect star in the world finally confessed. The brightest years of his life were also the loneliest. When those words came out, America went quiet, because everyone once believed Brad Pitt had it all: fame, fortune, and love. But the truth he's about to reveal will completely change the way the world sees him. It all began in 2005 and the year Hollywood held its breath. On the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, two of the world's most powerful stars met, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. The cameras captured chemistry that was supposed to stay on screen, but something much deeper was unfolding behind the scenes. At that time, Brad was the image of the American dream, charming, grounded, the man every director wanted and every magazine adored. He had just come out of one of the most famous marriages in Hollywood history. And then came Angelina, fearless, wild, magnetic, a woman who lived without apology. The media called them Brangelina, the ultimate power couple. Together, they adopted children, built a family, and seemed unstoppable. But behind the flash of cameras and red carpet smiles, small cracks were starting to form. Cracks that even the brightest lights in Hollywood couldn't hide. Their love story wasn't just about passion, it was about two worlds colliding, and one man slowly losing himself in the chaos of it all. For years, they were the most photographed couple in the world. Brangelina, a symbol of love, beauty, and power. Together, they raised 6 children, traveled to war zones, built charities, and embodied what Hollywood thought was perfect harmony. But perfection, as it turned out, was only a reflection on glass, dazzling from the outside, fragile underneath. By 2016, the cracks began to show. What started as whispered rumors of distance quickly turned into a public storm. One night, while returning from a family trip on a private jet, something happened. Something that would change everything. Reports surfaced of an incident between Brad and one of their children. The story spread like wildfire. Overnight, the man once hailed as Hollywood's gentleman became the target of speculation, judgment, and ridicule. Angelina filed for divorce the next day. The world stopped. Tabloids exploded with headlines, fans took sides, and social media turned their heartbreak into entertainment. For months, every magazine cover, every talk show, every YouTube clip repeated the same question: what really happened on that plane? Brad said nothing, not a word. While Angelina spoke through legal statements and interviews, he vanished. No red carpets, no press, no smiles. His silence only fueled the fire. People wanted to believe he was guilty. Others said he was protecting his children by staying quiet. Either way, the image of Brad Pitt, the confident, graceful leading man, began to fade. Behind closed doors, he was unraveling. Friends later said he spent months isolated in his Los Angeles home, surrounded by memories he couldn't escape. The laughter of his children, now distant. The echo of a love that once felt eternal, now reduced to legal documents and headlines. He was broken. One close friend revealed he couldn't sleep. He blamed himself for everything. The divorce turned into a custody battle, dragging on for years. Every motion, every leaked report became another headline. Angelina's team painted a picture of a man with anger issues. Brad's side defended him as a devoted father fighting for redemption. The truth was lost somewhere between 2 publicists and 1,000 clickbait articles. In a rare interview months later, Brad finally spoke, quietly, carefully. "I hit the wall. I had to confront my own demons. I hurt people I love." It wasn't an admission of guilt. It was a confession of humanity. The man the world once idolized had fallen, and for the first time, he wasn't trying to stand tall. He was trying to heal. Hollywood, of course, loves a scandal, but it also loves a comeback. Still, for Brad Pitt, redemption wouldn't come from a new movie or another award. It would have to come from the one thing fame could never give him: forgiveness. And as the years passed, that became the quiet battle he fought. Not against Angelina, not against the press, but against himself. The world thought Brad Pitt had vanished, but in his silence, something was changing. A away from cameras, lawyers, and the noise of fame, he was rebuilding himself piece by piece, quietly, painfully, honestly. It started with a decision to quit drinking. After years of denial, he walked into Alcoholics Anonymous and sat among strangers who didn't care about movie stars or Oscars. "I had to face my own weakness," he said later. "For a long time, I was running from myself." In that room, without the spotlight, he began to tell the truth, not to the world, but to himself. He spoke of his anger, his pride, his mistakes, of the moments when love turned into fear and family into chaos. He realized that for years, he had been chasing an illusion, a perfect image of happiness that never truly existed. A close friend would later reveal that Brad wrote letters, long, emotional letters to his children, trying to explain the man he was and the man he was becoming. None of them were sent. "He keeps them in a box," the friend said. "It's how he forgives himself." Behind the glamorous headlines, there was a man trying to learn how to be human again. He spent his days sculpting, painting, and tending to his garden, acts of quiet repair. For the first time in decades, he wasn't acting for the camera. He was simply being. In one interview, he smiled gently and said, "I spent years trying to fix the picture instead of the person in it." That single line became the most honest thing he had ever said. Because for Brad Pitt, the true revelation wasn't about Angelina, fame, or the plane. It was about himself, realizing that love, when mixed with ego and silence, can destroy the very soul it once inspired. When the world finally saw him again, older, thinner, but peaceful, people noticed something different. His eyes no longer carried that Hollywood confidence. They carried calm, acceptance, a quiet strength that only comes after breaking. The man who once defined perfection had learned to live with imperfection. And for the first time, he wasn't trying to be loved by the world, he was learning to love himself. When Brad Pitt reappeared in public, Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with him. The man who once ruled red carpets now spoke softly, smiled carefully, and avoided the spotlight as if it might burn him. But that quietness, the gentleness after the storm, made people listen again. The same tabloids that once destroyed him began to shift their tone. "Brad's redemption," one headline read. Others called it Hollywood's quiet comeback. He wasn't selling a movie, he was showing a man who had fallen and learned to stand differently. In interviews, Brad avoided drama. He didn't defend himself, and he didn't attack Angelina. When asked about their relationship, he simply said, "We're family. No matter what happened, that doesn't change." It was a statement that stopped the gossip cycle cold. For once, people saw maturity instead of scandal. Fans who had turned away started to root for him again, not as a movie star, but as a man who had faced his pain. Inside Hollywood, the conversation changed. Directors who once hesitated to cast him began to speak of his depth, his focus, his humility. Colleagues described him as a different person, someone who finally understood the weight of silence. Even those who once judged him harshly began to see that fame had never protected him from heartbreak. And then came Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It wasn't just another film, it was a mirror. Playing a fading stuntman, Brad brought his own scars to the screen. When he won the Oscar in 2020, his acceptance speech wasn't triumphant, it was tender. "This is for my kids," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I adore you." That night, applause filled the Dolby Theater, but what lingered wasn't his victory, it was his vulnerability. Still, opinions remained divided. Some said his calmness was calculated, an image rehab. Others believed he had genuinely changed. But even in that divide, something shifted. People stopped seeing him as a headline and started seeing him as human. Hollywood loves its heroes, but it loves its redemption stories even more. And Brad Pitt's was one of the rare few that felt real. He didn't need to prove innocence or perfection anymore. The battle wasn't about winning back the world, it was about reclaiming himself. And in doing so, he reminded everyone watching that even the brightest stars can lose their light, but they can also learn to shine again, quietly. After all the noise, the fame, and the heartbreak, Brad Pitt has found something he never truly had: peace. He no longer chases perfection or tries to rewrite the past. He lives quietly, choosing art, family, and silence over attention. And maybe that's the real victory. Learning that love doesn't always end in forever, but it can still lead to forgiveness. looking back, his story isn't just about a broken marriage or a Hollywood scandal. It's about what happens when a man loses everything and finally finds himself. So now the question remains, has Brad Pitt truly forgiven Angelina and himself? Or are some wounds meant to stay as gentle reminders of who we once were? What do you think? Tell us your thoughts below. And maybe that's the question that lingers for all of us. When love breaks you, can you ever truly find yourself again? Because for Brad Pitt, the answer might just be yes. What do you think? Did Brad Pitt lose himself or finally find who he was meant to be? Tell us in the comments below.